Well, Edna was about to say she went to a hat shop to see about her new hat. Continue, please.
Well, I was given a gift certificate towards the purchase of this hat. 2 young friends came with me, and we had a delightful time trying on elegant hats. The house was a heritage house, beautifully appointed, and the proprietress of the shop was so nice, and she designed the hat that I eventually bought from her. And I've heard it said that people came to see me in the parade, not to see me, but to see the hat.
I don't believe that. It must have been a very attractive hat, but...
it is. It's beautiful.
I think they were very anxious to see you, too.
Well, thank you. I'm trying to think of the lady's name. This is terrible because I know her quite well.
Yes.
I'll tell you the name later.
Sure, sure. While you take a drink of water, you can think about it. And if you can't think about it, what is her name? Natanya. All right.
So
remind me to get the correct spelling of all this later on, so I can. All right, Natanya.
I'll look it up.
Well, I will say you knew her for a long time.
Not really. I've just become acquainted with her through this hat.
Yeah.
But she's a lovely lady, and she wears hats wherever she goes.
Oh, is that right? Yeah.
At the time the parade passed where she and her husband were sitting, someone called out to me, Edna, I liked your hat.
Oh, yeah.
So I called back, I like yours too.
Oh, that's good. Good for you. Good for you. Well, I guess that's something you'll never forget.
No.
Yeah.
I have some pictures, many pictures actually, of this whole year, and especially the May Day parade. I had my the children that I wrote the poems about are now grown and married, and Sylvana has 2 children.
Oh.
And I'm given the honorary title of Grandma Edna.
Oh, I see.
So I was told I could have people ride with me in the parade. So I invited Sylvana's children.
Oh, I see.
The oldest is a girl, and her name is Christina. And the younger one is John Mario, who at this time is just 6. As we passed her reviewing stand in the parade, the master of ceremonies was giving all the history about Citizen of the Year and my name and all. And John Mario leaned over the front door of the car and announced to the people standing on the sidewalk, that's my grandma, you know.
Yeah, sure. That's very good. That's very good. Well, that's very good indeed. Edna, this has been an interesting experience for me, too, and I can, from what you've told me, and what I've learned about you during the course of this interview, there's no reason for me to believe that you should not deserve an honor such as being the Citizen of the Year. It's really a well-earned accomplishment. And just before we close this off, perhaps if you'd like to think of any other things about your life and times in Queensborough, come to mind.
There are many of them, Dick. I particularly had a good life in Queensborough. There were so many facets of it, and each of them was interesting in its own way. It was a beautiful area in my eyes, in as much as we could walk a couple of blocks towards the river and walk around a dike, and it was quiet and it was beautiful, and the scenery, the view of the city and all, was fantastic. And those are the things I think I'll remember if I'm not always living here. I'll take away the good memories. We used to walk through the Chinese farmers' gardens, and their gardens were a work of art, and it was lovely to see the eggplants shiny and purple, and the tomatoes beautifully red, and they grew cabbages that were like roses, but much, much larger. The whole experience of being associated with this type of life has given me many happy memories. One thing I think about lots of times is when we walked through the gardens in the spring and the farmers were plowing, they would turn over the worms. And the seagulls, of course, living close to the river, were on the lookout for the worms. And they would scream and cry when they saw something, and they'd dive, and they were trying to outwit each other, you know. And I was young when I was walking down there at that time, and this was all very exciting for me. I saw other wildlife down there, and I just enjoyed this type of life.
You know, from what you said at the beginning, so on the relationship to other parts of New Westminster, on the across the river, I get the distinct feeling that maybe they didn't fully appreciate what a gem this place was, because, and I've always tried to find out, and maybe you could some understanding about this. I pursued it to a certain extent, but I hadn't been thinking about that much until I had interviewed you. Maybe I should check with Archie or some other people, maybe City Hall and so on. But I discovered my research only told me that Queensborough became a part of New Westminster way back in 1889. I understand that the name John Henry and Ewing and others are quite prominent in the early days of Queensborough and its establishment. Do you think you could tell me something about that?
Well, I did some research for pictorial history that we have of Queensborough, and this is what I have found. In 1889, Mayor John Henry suggested the city of New Westminster be extended to include Lulu Island. At that time, Alexander Ewan was a city councilman. He had a fish cannery in Richmond, and the only access to that cannery was by a very roundabout route. So Mayor Henry and Alex Ewan applied and got a land grant on the eastern tip of Lulu Island. The city bought lot 757 of 600 acres nearest the city. Mr. Ewan bought the remainder of 140 acres at $1 per acre. Donald McGilvery, a contractor, was given 525 acres of the former 600 acres owned by the city. In return, he was to build a bridge to Lulu Island and lay the city water main.
Well, thank you very much, Edna. That fills in a few gaps I've had in my knowledge of this beautiful place. And I'm sure that a great deal of more research could be done in this area in order to find out some of the particulars. But that has given me a great deal of information. I appreciate it very, very much. I also like to say that this whole experience is not only interesting, but highly informative. And it has given me an enlarged appreciation, not only for the neighborhood, but also for you as a person. I'm sure that not very many people fully realize the extent of your experiences and how they've carried you through many times. Thank you very much for this wonderful time.
That was very kind.